I'm the law on this street.
You're a fraud, and I'm coming.
The cuffs clicked and Elena flinched, metal-biting skin, while the man in black said, "Ma'am, don't resist," like he'd practiced it in a mirror. Cassandra Holloway watched from the curb, chin lifted, heels planted, the clipboard queen smiling as if this were a ribbon cutting. "This is an HOA matter," she said, dismissive, smug. "Step back." The gate arm hummed behind us, cameras blinking, neighbors frozen with phones raised, the enforcer in crimson nodding approval as my wife's wrists were pinned. I stared at the badge when it flashed. Too shiny, wrong weight, and felt the ground tilt. "That insignia isn't issued," I said quietly, a sentence I kept inside my teeth. The fake officer's jaw tightened. Cassandra waved him on. "Proceed," the tyrant in heels ordered, already certain she owned the moment. If you've ever felt that electric jolt when bullies overreach and the truth starts pushing back, stay right here and hit subscribe now. "My name's Aaron Whitmore," I said, steady, because steady was the only thing holding me upright. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch the man. I didn't reach for anything. I stood between the gate shadow and my family and let calm do the work. "This street is private," I added, measured. "Your authority isn't." Elena's breath shook. The zip ties rasped. Our kid cried behind me, small hands clutching my jacket, nails digging through fabric. The sound tunneled straight into my chest. This gate wasn't just an entrance. It was where we learned to ride bikes, where neighbors traded casseroles after the storm took our fence, where Elena planted the bougainvillea she loved because red made her laugh after chemo. Cassandra knew that. She'd signed off on the landscaping exception herself. Now she used it like a trap. "Sir, step aside," the man said again, louder, performing. His radio crackled with static that meant nothing. The smell of hot asphalt rose. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped and died. Cassandra shifted, the board chair glancing at the cameras, recalculating. "We're enforcing compliance," she said, louder for the phones. "He's obstructing." I didn't move. I watched Elena's shoulders curl inward, the way they had the night we waited for test results, and something inside me went quiet and sharp. I felt the old discipline settle, the rule that said, "Don't escalate, don't contaminate, don't make this about you." "Where are you watching from?" I asked the ring of neighbors, not turning, because witnesses mattered now more than comfort. The enforcer in crimson leaned closer, breath sour, and whispered about detainment windows and citations, words meant to scare, not to hold up. Cassandra Holloway nodded along, the tyrant in heels pretending this was governance, pretending fear was consent. I cataloged the details without reacting, the wrong phrasing, the missing identifiers, the sloppy posture under scrutiny. Each second added weight. I felt every stare like heat on my neck, the low murmur swelling, disbelief turning to anger, someone sobbing, someone swearing, a chorus building as the checkpoint transformed into a stage. Control was slipping from her fingers, and Cassandra sensed it. Lips thinning, eyes hardening, doubling down instead of stopping. The gate arm lifted with a whine, and the fake officer tugged Elena forward. The crowd inhaled together. Cassandra smiled, the clipboard queen savoring control, already drafting the email that would bury this as procedure. She didn't see what I saw. The hesitation in the man's hands, the way his grip shifted when the cameras zoomed, the crack in certainty spreading. "Elena," I said softly, close enough that only she heard. "I'm here." Her eyes met mine, wet, furious, unbroken, the cuffs cut, the phones rolled. The gate stood open like a mouth, swallowing my family under false authority, and I let it happen because stopping it now would ruin everything that had to come next for everyone watching now. The patrol SUV swallowed Elena, and the door shut with a hollow thud that echoed in my ribs. Vinyl smelled like disinfectant and sunburned plastic. The man slid into the driver's seat, radio hissing nonsense, while Cassandra Holloway hovered by the window, the tyrant in heels tapping her pen against the glass as if keeping time. "We'll hold her until compliance is verified," the board chair announced, loud enough for the phones, then quieter, sharper. "You should have controlled her." I stayed where I was, hands visible, breathing slow. "Release her," I said, not pleading. The enforcer in crimson smirked in the reflection, knuckles whitening on the wheel. Cassandra smiled back, the clipboard queen enjoying the symmetry of it. "Sir, this is administrative," she said. "You're interfering again." The SUV rolled. Gravel popped under the tires. The gate receded, and with it the chorus of voices until only the engine and my heartbeat remained. I followed on foot along the private lane, not touching, not blocking, cataloging. The radio chatter never resolved into call signs. The language stayed sloppy. Detention windows, not custody. Compliance, not charges. I felt the old training hum without letting it show. We stopped beside the clubhouse portico, stucco cool in the shade, flags limp in the heat. Cassandra Holloway stepped forward first, heels clicking, a practiced authority. "We'll document," she said. "Then she'll go." She said it like a favor. The tyrant in heels glanced at the cameras mounted under the eaves, then at the phones still filming from the sidewalk, recalculating again. Elena sat rigid, wrists bound, chin high. When she saw me, her mouth trembled and steadied. I swallowed and nodded once. "I'm here," I said, low. The man blocked my view, chest puffed, hands theatrically resting near empty holsters. "Back up," he warned. His voice cracked on the word. Cassandra bristled. "Do not let him intimidate you," the board chair snapped, performing leadership. "Proceed." She pointed toward the glass doors as if pointing made it legal. I watched her posture instead of her face, the way certainty tipped into strain. Inside the portico, the air buzzed with cicadas and distant lawn equipment. Someone whispered my name from the sidewalk. Someone else cursed. I let the sound wash through without reacting. The clipboard queen leaned closer to the man. "Remember your authority," she said, too softly for the cameras. He nodded, swallowed. I spoke to the space, not them. "You're detaining without jurisdiction," I said, even, factual. "Your equipment isn't compliant. Your language isn't either." Cassandra Holloway laughed, short and brittle. "You think your opinion matters?" the enforcer in crimson added, louder, for effect. The glass doors reflected us as a tableau. My wife restrained, my child clinging to my leg, a crowd at the curb, the tyrant in heels center frame. I noted the missing seal on the uniform patch, the off-brand restraints, the way the man avoided eye contact when the word arrest hung between us unspoken. Each detail stacked, weight on a scale I wasn't tipping yet. A golf cart whined past, oblivious, sprinklers ticking on. Normalcy pressed in, surreal and cruel. Cassandra stepped back, folding her arms, the clipboard queen settling into a stance that dared anyone to challenge her. "We'll be done shortly," she announced. "Disperse." No one dispersed. Phones stayed up. Elena's breath hitched. I felt anger flare and banked it. This wasn't the moment. I watched the man's hands shake as he reached for a clipboard that matched Cassandra's, a prop handed off like a baton. When he fumbled it, the sound was small, but it carried. Something fragile cracked in the silence, and I knew the pressure had begun to work. I stayed still, eyes open, counting breaths, letting the crowd's patience harden, letting Cassandra Holloway feel it. The board chair, sensing control, slipping as the man beside her waited for orders that never came again. The clipboard slipped from the man's hands and clacked against tile, and in that sharp sound, the room seemed to choose sides. We were inside the HOA administrative suite now, fluorescent lights buzzing, air stale with printer toner and burnt coffee. Cassandra Holloway recovered first, the tyrant in heels bending to snatch the clipboard before anyone else could touch it. "We're continuing," the board chair said, brittle, too loud for the small space. "Sit her." Elena was guided to a chair without ceremony. The restraint stayed on. My child pressed into my thigh, fingers trembling. I kept my palms open and my voice level, letting the walls and the witnesses do the work. The enforcer in crimson avoided my eyes, shoulders hunched, breath shallow, a man pretending weight where none existed. A door creaked. Mark Delaney hovered in the threshold, keys jangling, tie loosened, face pale. He didn't step fully inside. He didn't leave. He just stood there, weight rocking heel to toe, hands worrying the lanyard at his chest. The treasurer swallowed hard when he saw Elena's wrists. His gaze flicked to Cassandra Holloway and away, like a child checking a storm. "Mark!" Cassandra snapped, irritation flashing. "You're late!" The clipboard queen thrust the folder toward him. "Witness the documentation." Mark's hands shook when he reached for it. He took the folder and immediately dropped his eyes, shoulders curling inward. He cleared his throat and tried to speak, failed, tried again. Is that necessary?" he asked, nodding toward the restraints without lifting his head. The room held its breath. The tyrant in heels smiled thinly. "Emergency compliance," Cassandra said. "You approved the security line item, remember?" She said it softly, with an edge meant only for him. Mark's jaw worked. He nodded once, too fast. I watched his shoes instead of his face, scuffed leather tapping an uneven rhythm against tile. Fear had a sound. It was that tap. I addressed him without turning. "You don't have to be part of this," I said, calm, factual. "You can step out." Cassandra bristled. "He will not," the board chair said. "This is internal." The enforcer in crimson shifted his weight, hand hovering near nothing again, eyes darting to the cameras in the corner. The hum grew louder. Mark licked his lips. He stared at the paperwork as if it might explain itself. His shoulders sagged. "Cassandra," he murmured, voice barely there. "Maybe we should slow down." He flinched when she turned on him. The clipboard queen's smile vanished. "Are you questioning authority?" she asked. The words landed like a slap. Mark recoiled, a visible inch backward, spine bending. He shook his head quickly, then stilled, breathing shallow. Sweat darkened his collar. I didn't press. Pressure too early snaps the wrong way. I cataloged instead. The absence of a badge number on the forms, the generic letterhead, the language that danced around arrest without naming it. Observation, not accusation. The strategy advanced by patience. Elena met my eyes and nodded, tiny, brave. The child's sniffles echoed. Someone outside knocked, tentative, then retreated. The enforcer in crimson wiped his palms on his pants and swallowed, a sound that carried. "Proceed," Cassandra Holloway said again, louder, trying to reclaim the room. The tyrant in heels paced, heels clicking, authority leaking with every step. Mark stood frozen, fingers white on the folder, eyes flicking between the restraints in Cassandra's face. His knee bounced now, fast, betraying him. I felt the moment settle, fragile and heavy. Mark's body told the truth before his mouth ever would. He wasn't on her side. He was trapped. I held still. Let the silence stretch. Let the lights buzz. Let fear do what fear does when it's seen. Outside, authority didn't start with a call. It started here, with a witness shaking in plain light, deciding whether to step back or step forward while Cassandra Holloway watched, misreading control for certainty, and the enforcer in crimson waited for permission he didn't have to keep pretending. Silence stretched until Cassandra Holloway snapped it with a clap of the clipboard. "We're done here," the tyrant in heels said, pivoting toward the exit. The enforcer in crimson opened the door, fluorescent buzz spilling into afternoon glare, and the crowd noise surged back like surf. Elena stood when they tugged her up, wrists still bound, chin set. I stepped with them, never touching, my child glued to my leg. The parking lot heat slapped my face. Engines idled. Phones followed. Cassandra took the center stripe like a dais, the board chair announcing release conditions as if reciting weather. "She's free pending review," the clipboard queen said. "Compliance achieved." The man nodded too fast and reached for the cuffs. "Not yet," Cassandra added, savoring the pause. "We'll escort." The enforcer in crimson hesitated, eyes flicking to the cameras. His fingers trembled when he cut the ties, plastic snapping sharp. Elena rubbed her wrists, red lines blooming. I let my breath out slowly. The old rule held, don't argue in the doorway. Observe. The radio crackled again, empty noise. No case number, no destination. The tyrant in heels talked over the murmurs, voice climbing as the crowd pressed closer. Someone shouted her name. Someone else laughed, disbelieving. Mark Delaney lingered by the door, not crossing the stripe. His hands were empty now, palms damp, tie crooked. He watched Elena flex her fingers and flinched. Cassandra shot him a look. "Go," the board chair hissed. Mark didn't move. A patrol-looking sedan rolled through the lot and didn't slow. Normal life passed inches away. I tasted metal. Elena leaned toward me, whispering, "I'm okay." The lie steadied us both. Our child tugged my sleeve, eyes wide. I nodded and kept my gaze forward. Cassandra Holloway raised her phone. "Statement," the clipboard queen announced, filming herself. This resident was non-compliant and then released. She smiled for the lens. The enforcer in crimson hovered behind her, trying to look solid. I watched the sun glare off the fake badge, the way it swung too freely on its chain. "Ma'am," a neighbor said, voice shaking. "You can't do this." Cassandra laughed, sharp. "We just did." The tyrant in heels turned, nearly colliding with Mark. He swallowed and stepped aside, shoulders folding. I felt the shift before I saw it. The crowd's noise changed pitch, anger organizing. I didn't feed it. I stepped half a pace back, creating space. "Elena," I said softly, "let's go." We moved toward the sidewalk, away from the cars, away from the doors. Behind us, Cassandra kept talking, louder, stacking words like sandbags. "Private road, contracted authority." Each phrase rang hollow. The enforcer in crimson checked his radio again, jaw tight. A woman filmed Elena's wrists, zooming on the marks. Someone cursed. At the sidewalk, the shade cooled my skin. I stopped. I looked back once. Cassandra Holloway was still centered, still performing, but the board chair's smile had slipped. Mark stood apart now, staring at the ground, foot tapping. He looked up and met my eyes for a heartbeat. Fear, then resolve, flickered. I didn't nod, I didn't speak. I turned away and walked, letting distance become evidence, letting witnesses keep filming, letting the tyrant in heels keep digging. The strategy advanced without a word, carried by heat, by noise, by the simple fact that nothing she said sounded like law. I felt gravel under my shoes, and the faint tremor in my hands fade as distance did its work. Sirens wailed far off, unrelated, but they sharpened every ear. The sun dipped behind a cloud and the lot cooled. I kept walking, counting steps, counting breaths, letting Cassandra Holloway fill the air with claims while the crowd filled it with proof, and knowing the next move would come from outside, patient, lawful, inevitable. I trusted time, witnesses, and restraint to do what force never could for us all there today. The path curved away from the lot into a strip of oaks and playground shade, mulch soft underfoot, cicadas grinding like a warning siren. I kept walking until the crowd noise dulled and my pulse matched my steps. Elena leaned on the railing by the splash pad, rubbing her wrists, watching water arc and fall. Our kid chased a leaf. I listened, not to them, but to the neighborhood breathing again. Behind us, Cassandra Holloway's voice still carried from the asphalt, sharp even at distance. The board chair was performing for an audience that had thinned, repeating words that sounded official and felt wrong. I didn't need documents to know that. I needed patterns, posture, phrasing. Observation had always been enough. A maintenance cart rolled past, engine whining. The driver slowed, eyes flicking from Elena's wrists to my face, then back toward the lot. He shook his head and kept going. 2 joggers stopped near the map kiosk, phones up, whispering. The story was already moving without me pushing it. We sat at a picnic table under the pavilion roof. The wood was warm. Elena exhaled and let her shoulders drop an inch. "He didn't know what he was doing," she said, not asking. I nodded. "He knew what he was pretending," I replied, keeping my voice even. The distinction mattered. From the path, the enforcer in crimson appeared, pacing, phone to his ear, back turned. He kept looking over his shoulder toward the lot, then toward the woods, like someone waiting for permission that never arrived. Cassandra Holloway stalked after him moments later, heels stabbing gravel, the clipboard queen gesturing too wide. They argued without sound, hands chopping air, power frayed when it left the stage. I noted the details as they happened. The fake officer avoided the pavilion cameras. Cassandra kept positioning herself where lenses could see her face. Neither touched Elena again. Each choice said something. Each mistake narrowed the lane they could drive. A woman approached us, cautious, holding her phone low. "I filmed," she said. "Everything." I thanked her and didn't take the phone. "Keep it," I said. "Back it up." She nodded, relieved to be given a task. Outside authority thrived on many small, correct decisions made by many people. The splash pad shut off with a hiss. Kids groaned. The sound made the space feel smaller, tighter. Cassandra Holloway raised her voice again, calling for order, for dispersal. The board chair sounded tired now. The tyrant in heels had lost the cadence. I felt the moment to move without moving. I stepped to the pavilion edge and spoke to no one in particular. "If anyone was told they were detained today, write down exactly what was said," I murmured. "Who said it? Where?" I didn't collect anything. I didn't explain why. Heads nodded. Pens came out. The enforcer in crimson finally noticed. He stiffened, phone dropping to his side. Cassandra followed his gaze and locked onto me, eyes narrowing. She marched toward the pavilion, smile pasted back on. "Sir," she called, sweetness forced. "We've resolved this." I met her halfway, stopping short of the shade line. "You released her," I said. "You didn't resolve anything." My tone stayed flat. The air felt charged, like before rain. She leaned in, breath sharp. "You think you're clever," the clipboard queen hissed. I watched her hands shake, just once, before she hid them. The pattern was complete. They had crossed lines, publicly, repeatedly, and now they were trying to erase footprints in wet sand. I turned away before she could escalate, guiding Elena back to the path. The pavilion emptied in our wake, people murmuring, writing, filming. I felt the strategy advance not by force, but by gravity, pulling the truth downhill toward people whose job it was to pick it up next. Soon, patient systems would answer, calmly, correctly, and publicly, without my involvement today. I guided Elena along the gravel path until it dipped toward the retention pond, the water darkening as clouds stacked low. The wooden footbridge creaked under our steps, boards warm, then cooling. Frogs clicked in the reeds. The sounds steadied me. Behind us, the pavilion noise thinned to murmurs, then nothing. Distance did what arguments couldn't. Halfway across, I stopped. Elena leaned on the rail, watching ripples spread from a tossed pebble. Our kid counted ducks. I scanned without staring, letting habit work. Across the water, the clubhouse lights flicked on. Near the service road, the enforcer in crimson paced again, phone pressed to his ear, posture tight. Cassandra Holloway emerged from the trees moments later, heels sinking into damp soil, the tyrant in heels visibly irritated by the terrain. They argued again, closer now. I couldn't hear words, but I didn't need them. Cassandra's gestures were expansive, commanding. The man's were small, defensive. He nodded too much. When she pointed toward the gate, he shook his head. A refusal, small but real. Observation mattered more than proof today. I lowered my voice. "They're improvising," I said to Elena, "not for comfort, but accuracy. Watch how often they look for cameras." She nodded, jaw tight. The wind carried a snatch of Cassandra Holloway's voice. Order, authority, compliance, phrases that meant less each time she said them. A jogger crossed the bridge from the far side, slowing when she saw us. "Are you okay?" she asked Elena. Elena smiled thinly. "I am now." The jogger hesitated, then said, "They told my neighbor he was detained last week." She frowned, uncertain. I thanked her and asked where. She pointed toward the mail kiosk by the tennis courts. "Same words," she said. Sounded wrong. That was the click. Same phrasing, same theater, not paperwork, not reports, pattern recognition. I felt the strategy advance with a quiet certainty. Cassandra Holloway was consistent in the wrong ways. The enforcer in crimson spotted us and stiffened. He started toward the bridge, then stopped when Cassandra grabbed his sleeve. The clipboard queen leaned close, face hard, whispering like pressure. He pulled free, eyes darting to the water, to the trees, to us. He didn't cross the bridge. He turned away instead. A truck rumbled over the service road grate. The pond reflected the sky like bruised glass. I took out my phone and didn't film them. I filmed the empty bridge, the time, the soundscape, the ordinary becoming evidence by context alone. The tyrant in heels noticed and froze, then waved dismissively, trying to reclaim narrative with posture. It failed. Mark Delaney appeared at the far path, alone, walking as if the ground might give way. He stopped short of the bridge, hands jammed in pockets, shoulders hunched. Cassandra Holloway clocked him and lifted her chin, summoning. He didn't move. His foot tapped. Fear again, audible even from here. I didn't call to him. I didn't beckon. I let the distance speak. Outside authority required witnesses to choose visibility. Mark looked from Cassandra to Elena's wrists, then to the water. He swallowed and stayed put. The clouds broke. Rain ticked the pond, soft at first, then steady. The bridge darkened. The enforcer in crimson retreated toward the service shed, head down. Cassandra Holloway stood alone at the path edge, heels slick with mud, the board chair stranded between cameras and cover. I took Elena's hand and crossed the rest of the bridge. Each step felt deliberate, counted. The night settled. Somewhere, Engines started. Somewhere else, people uploaded videos. I didn't need to do anything more here. The observation phase was complete. The truth had a shape now, and it would travel where it needed to go without my escort. The sun was just dipping below the treetops when Mark Delaney finally stepped forward, his hands trembling as he clutched a folder thick with invoices and vague contracts. The treasurer's face was pale, eyes darting like a man caught in a storm, torn between loyalty and fear. Cassandra Holloway stood nearby, the clipboard queen still holding court, but the air had shifted. The tyrant in heels was losing ground, and Mark's hesitation was the crack I'd been waiting for. He avoided my gaze at first, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like he was trying to disappear into the shadows of the clubhouse parking lot. But when I spoke, his head snapped up, startled by the quiet authority in my voice. "Mark," I said simply, "you don't have to protect them." The board chair's smile faltered. The enforcer in crimson stiffened, fingers twitching near the fake badge clipped to his belt. Cassandra narrowed her eyes like a predator watching a wounded animal. But Mark was already stepping away, the burden breaking visibly from his shoulders. I approved payments for security," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't know what they were doing with it." He opened the folder slowly, the papers rattling in the quiet like a confession. These invoices, the uniforms, the fake badges, the equipment rentals, it's all here. But the contracts are vague. No law enforcement agency involved. I nodded, keeping my tone steady. "And the man who arrested Elena? No license, no jurisdiction." Mark swallowed, hands shaking as he thumbed through documents with increasing disbelief. "I was afraid to speak up," he said, voice cracking. "Cassandra, she's powerful. She makes people afraid." The clipboard queen's expression darkened. The tyrant in heels stepped closer, but Mark held up a trembling hand. "No," he said firmly. "This has to stop." He looked at me then, eyes clear, decision made. "I want to help, tell the truth." Behind us, the clubhouse buzzed with distant voices and cameras still recording. Neighbors gathered at a safe distance, some nodding, others whispering. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. I felt the slow burn of victory beginning to take hold, not through force, but through a single witness stepping into the light. Cassandra Holloway's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. The board chair's posture stiffened, a queen losing her crown. The enforcer in crimson glanced nervously around, his bravado fading under the weight of the moment. I stepped closer to Mark. "We'll need everything you have, financial records, emails, authorization forms, anything that ties the HOA leadership to this fraud." His hands trembled less now as he nodded. "I'll get it," he promised. The crowd around us began to murmur, a swell of energy that was equal parts relief and outrage. Elena stood beside me, wrists still marked, but spirit unbroken. Our child clung to my side, wide-eyed but safe. "I want the truth out," Mark said again, voice firmer. "No more fake badges, no more intimidation." The clipboard queen's facade cracked. Cassandra Holloway took a step back, as if realizing the ground beneath her was shifting. The tyrant in heels seemed smaller, less certain. Even the enforcer in crimson looked defeated. I glanced at the crowd. "This isn't just about us," I said quietly. "It's about every family here who's been bullied and threatened by fake authority. Mark's courage today gives us the chance to stop it." The treasurer swallowed, nodded, and then pulled out his phone. "I'll send you everything," he said, voice steady now, resolve hardening like steel. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the gated community, I felt the weight of the fight ahead, but also the light of a turning tide. Cassandra Holloway's reign was crumbling, piece by piece, exposed by the truth and witnesses brave enough to speak. The tyrant in heels and her enforcer looked on, defeated but unbroken. The battle wasn't over, but with Mark's help, the victory was finally within reach. The meeting room was cold, a sterile space of fluorescent light and buzz, a far cry from the warm homes it overlooked. I sat across from Mark Delaney, watching his fingers trace the edges of the folder, now thick with emails, invoices, and photographs. Cassandra Holloway's name was written on nearly every page, the board chair's signature stamped like a seal of false authority. The clipboard queen had become the architect of a house built on lies. Mark's voice was low but steady. "I never thought it would come to this," he said. "I just wanted to keep the peace." His eyes met mine, a mix of regret and relief. "But the records don't lie. We paid for a security service. They wore badges, carried radios, even handcuffs. None of it real." The enforcer in crimson shadow loomed in my mind, a counterfeit guardian whose power was all bluff and intimidation. The tyrant in heels had gambled on fear and silence. Now those bets were collapsing under the weight of evidence. I dialed a number on my phone, a direct line to a trusted federal investigator specializing in civil rights and fraud. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. "We have a situation," I said. "Unauthorized law enforcement impersonation, fraudulent contracts, abuse of HOA authority. I'm sending you the package." As I spoke, I could feel Cassandra Holloway's presence looming outside this room, figuratively and literally. The board chair had sensed the threat long before I did, and the clipboard queen's empire of intimidation was unraveling thread by thread. Mark leaned forward, eyes sharp. "They've been trying to rewrite the rules retroactively," he said, "amending bylaws to cover their actions after the fact." His voice dropped. "But it's all hollow." "That's the pattern," I confirmed. "They manufacture authority, then hide behind it when it's questioned." The tyrant in heels wasn't just reckless. She was calculating, desperate to maintain control. I organized the documents on the table: financials, videos, eyewitness statements, records of complaints dismissed or ignored. Every piece was a stitch in a case too big for the HOA's small stage. Elena joined us briefly, quiet but resolute. She spoke softly, voice steady despite the bruises on her wrists. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about everyone here who's been silenced." Her gaze held marks, a shared understanding passing between them. The federal contact on the phone gave a nod I couldn't see but felt. "We'll coordinate a lawful investigation," the agent said. "No vigilante moves, proper warrants. We'll work through the system." I hung up and looked at Mark. "The raid will come," I said, "but it has to be by the book. No shortcuts." The tension in the room shifted. Mark exhaled, the weight easing. "I'm ready to testify," he said, "to expose everything." Outside, the quiet hum of the neighborhood felt distant, peaceful but fragile. Cassandra Holloway and her enforcer in crimson might still hold court, but their reign was now a story waiting to be dismantled by real authority. I felt the plan crystallize, patient, legal, and unstoppable. The victory wouldn't come from force or retaliation, but from exposing the truth through the proper channels. The HOA's false empire would fall, piece by piece, under the gaze of the law. As we packed the files, Elena touched my arm lightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not letting them win." The clipboard queen's world was closing in, and soon the neighborhood would breathe freely again. The tyrant in heels would face consequences, and the enforcer in crimson would be exposed for the fraud he was. But that moment was still ahead. For now, we prepared. We waited. The outside authorities were coming, and with them, justice. The days blurred into a tense rhythm, meetings with investigators, coordinating with legal counsel, and watching Cassandra Holloway's empire fray from a distance. The board chair's attempts to rally support fell flat. The clipboard queen's polished smiles grew forced, cracks showing beneath her carefully painted veneer. The enforcer in crimson stayed silent, lurking in the background, a shadow of his former bluster. The tyrant in heels was on the defensive. Inside my home, the tension lingered like a low hum. Elena stayed close, strength woven with weariness. Our child sensed the undercurrent too, eyes wide but curious. I spent hours poring over documents, cross-referencing evidence, connecting the dots between the HOA's fabricated authority and the real harm they'd caused. One afternoon, I sat at my desk when Mark Delaney called. His voice was steady but cautious. "I found more," he said. "Emails between Cassandra and the so-called HOA officer. Payments disguised as consulting fees. Requests to destroy certain records." His tone tightened. "She's been covering her tracks." I didn't respond immediately. The clipboard queen's web was thicker than we'd thought. But that made the outside intervention even more critical. The victory strategy was solidifying, a lawful, surgical dismantling rather than a noisy public showdown. I met with the federal task force in a conference room, bristling with screens and files. Agents asked precise questions, eyes sharp and thorough. I handed over video footage, the arrest of Elena, the fake badge swinging too freely, the public humiliation at the checkpoint. They listened without judgment, taking it all in. Outside, the neighborhood seemed normal. Children played in yards, lawnmowers hummed, birds called. But beneath the surface, the system that Cassandra Holloway built was cracking, exposed by careful eyes and steady hands. Word spread quietly among residents. The tyrant in heels found fewer allies. The enforcer in crimson vanished from the checkpoint, replaced by security signs, but no one to enforce them. The board chair's emails became sparse, her public appearances fewer. One evening, as dusk deepened, Elena and I stood near the community entrance, the symbolic checkpoint now eerily silent. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in weeks, hope, but the fight wasn't over. Cassandra Holloway was still dangerous, capable of last-minute maneuvers. The clipboard queen might try to rewrite the narrative, muddy the waters with legal jargon and half-truths. The enforcer in crimson could resurface, trying to salvage whatever power remained. Yet, I knew the strength of truth backed by law. The outside authority intervention was not just a strategy, it was a promise that no one, not even a tyrant in heels, could wield fake power without consequence. I turned to Elena, squeezing her hand. "We're close," I said softly. "Soon this neighborhood will be safe again." She nodded, eyes shining with tired determination. Our child tugged at my sleeve, breaking the moment with innocent laughter. Life pushed forward, even amidst chaos. The board chair's reign was unraveling, and the community was awakening to the truth. Justice wasn't a swift strike, but a careful, relentless pursuit, and I was ready to see it through. The morning air was crisp when the news broke. A warrant had been issued. The federal task force was moving in, their authority clear and undeniable. Cassandra Holloway's carefully constructed world was about to collide with real law enforcement. The clipboard queen's reign was crumbling under the weight of justice. Elena and I stood quietly by the entrance checkpoint, the place where it all began, the symbol of false power and public humiliation. The enforcer in crimson was nowhere in sight, his fake badge replaced by emptiness. The tyrant in heels had vanished behind the facade of calm, but I could sense the storm brewing beneath. The neighborhood was buzzing, whispers weaving through manicured lawns and gated fences. People gathered, some cautious, others emboldened by the knowledge that their ordeal was finally being addressed. The board chair's emails remained unanswered, the clipboard queen's phone silent. The sound of sirens in the distance was faint but unmistakable. A convoy of marked vehicles rolled through the gates, lights flashing, but no chaos. This was different, calm, lawful, precise. Outside authority was asserting itself without spectacle. I watched as agents moved with purpose toward the clubhouse. Cameras followed, recording every moment. The community watched too, some stepping closer, others holding back, but all bearing witness. From the shadows near the clubhouse, Cassandra Holloway appeared. Her face was composed but tight, the tyrant in heels forced to confront a reckoning she couldn't control. The enforcer in crimson flanked her, but his usual swagger was replaced by a cautious, watchful silence. Inside, agents secured evidence: computers, phones, files, uniforms. The fake badges, the altered contracts, the intimidation scripts, all collected and cataloged. The clipboard queen's empire was being dismantled piece by piece. Elena squeezed my hand, her eyes steady despite the tension. "This is what justice looks like," she whispered. "Not flashy, but real." The raid was thorough but respectful. No violence, no theatrics. The federal presence was a reminder that true authority was rooted in law, not fear or false badges. The neighborhood breathed collectively, the weight of months beginning to lift. Outside, neighbors spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories of intimidation and fear, now given a platform. The board chair's reign was publicly exposed, her attempts to silence dissent laid bare. As the agents loaded evidence into trucks, I saw Mark Delaney step forward, offering cooperation, his face marked by relief and resolve. The conflicted witness was now an active participant in restoring truth. The enforcer in crimson was taken into custody quietly, the man who played cop without authority now facing real consequences. Cassandra Holloway stood nearby, her posture rigid, the clipboard queen reduced to a defendant in a case she tried to control. I looked around at the community, the families, the neighbors who had endured months of fear. This moment was theirs, the turning point where false power was stripped away and justice took its place. The tyrant in heels had lost, the fake cop was exposed, and the neighborhood would heal. The community center was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Residents had gathered, murmurs swelling into a low roar as Cassandra Holloway, no longer the confident board chair but the accused, stood at the front, flanked by her dwindling circle. The clipboard queen's facade was cracked, the tyrant in heels reduced to a defensive posture. This was the public reckoning, the moment where false authority met real accountability. I stood among neighbors, my wife Elena by my side, our child clinging quietly to my leg. The enforcer in crimson sat to the side, handcuffed and silent, his bravado shattered under the weight of exposure. Cameras from local news crews captured every moment, every glare, every whispered excuse, every strained smile. Cassandra spoke first, her voice practiced but lacking conviction. She painted herself as a victim of misunderstanding, a leader trying to maintain order in a chaotic community. The clipboard queen spun a tale of bureaucracy and necessity, but the crowd's patience thinned with each word. When the floor opened for questions, the murmurs erupted into pointed accusations. Why were residents detained without cause? Who authorized fake badges? Why were our complaints ignored? Voices rose, fueled by months of fear and frustration. Mark Delaney stepped forward, his presence steady and resolute. The conflicted witness transformed into a pillar of truth. He recounted the financial records, the unauthorized contracts, the hush money paid to the enforcer in crimson. The board chair's eyes flickered with desperation, but found no refuge. Neighbors shared their own stories, elderly homeowners intimidated into silence, single parents threatened, fines imposed without legal backing. The tyrant in heels stood cornered, the weight of community outrage pressing down. I spoke last, calm but firm. This isn't just about one person or one incident, I said. It's about restoring trust, protecting families, and ensuring no one here faces fake authority again. The room fell silent, the gravity of the statement sinking in. Cassandra Holloway's attempt to reclaim power was over. The enforcer in crimson's mask was torn away. The clipboard queen's reign dismantled by truth and courage. As the meeting closed, the community's mood shifted. Conversations turned hopeful, plans for new leadership, calls for transparency, promises to rebuild. The neighborhood that had been silenced was finding its voice again. Outside, I looked at Elena and our child, a sense of relief washing over me. The victory was public, undeniable, and real. The fake HOA cop was arrested. The tyrant in heels had fallen, and the community would heal. The courtroom was silent, the air heavy with the weight of months of truth finally laid bare. Cassandra Holloway, once the untouchable board chair, the tyrant in heels who ruled with intimidation, now faced the consequences of her choices. The clipboard queen's confident mask had shattered, revealing the damage she'd wrought on the community. The enforcer in crimson sat beside her, his fake authority stripped away, powerless and exposed. I sat near Elena, our child beside us, watching as the judge read the verdict. The room held its breath. This was more than just a legal victory. It was the restoration of justice, the validation of every fearful whisper, every quiet complaint dismissed by the clipboard queen's regime. When the gavel finally struck, the judge's words echoed like a release. Guilty on all counts: fraud, impersonation, civil rights violations. Cassandra Holloway's reign ended not with a shout, but with the steady collapse of truth. Outside, the neighborhood gathered, some at the courthouse steps, others watching from afar. The news cameras rolled, capturing faces marked by relief and hope. The tyrant in heels was gone. The enforcer in crimson was behind bars. The community could breathe again. I felt Elena's hand tighten around mine. This is what happens when fake authority meets real courage, she whispered. Our child looked up, eyes wide but safe. The victory wasn't just about punishment. It was about healing, about reclaiming trust where fear had taken root. The board chair's empire had been dismantled by more than law enforcement. It had been dismantled by the voices of those she sought to silence. In the weeks that followed, the HOA was restructured under court supervision. New leadership emerged, residents dedicated to transparency, fairness, and respect. The gated community, once stifled by fear, found a new rhythm, one of openness and security rooted in truth, not intimidation. I reflected on the journey, from the moment the cuffs clicked on Elena's wrists at the checkpoint, to the quiet moments of gathering evidence, to the public confrontation that toppled a tyrant. Every step had mattered. Every witness had mattered. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Together, we can expose injustice and protect the communities we love. The fight isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet gathering of truth, the slow building of justice that changes everything. Cassandra Holloway's era ended because people refused to be silenced, and that's a lesson every neighborhood should hold close. As I watched the sun set over the gates, I felt a fierce hope, not just for my family, but for every community shadowed by false authority. The road ahead is long, but the path is clear. Truth, justice, and courage will always prevail.